for waiting through all my ranting, because now the icing and the cake and the filling, it's all there. It's all there. Reverend Doug's going to talk about building wisdom with awareness and action. Thank you. Please welcome Reverend Doug Craig.
Well, thank you, Joanne. How are you doing, dear? My. Good morning, everyone. And how are we on this actually wonderful morning, you know? You might be whining a little bit about the rain, but I got to tell you, there's lots of people that'll not whine about it if they could get it right now. It's just terrible. Saskatchewan. Yeah, I was there last weekend in Regina, and an amazing thing happened. The football game has canceled on Friday night because of the smoke. So I watched it on the Saturday, and I had to help with a lot of love because we kicked some serious butt down there. So I was spreading the love around in the hotel. I don't think it was appreciated as much as I gave, but the essence was there. I just loved it. Anyhow, sorry, I'm a hardcore football fan, so if you didn't figure that out, you just did. I mean, 3 weeks ago, we had the home game. There were 1,500 people in the stands because it just poured, and my buddy drove 2 hours from Alex in the rain to get there so we could go sit in the rain for the whole game. And do you know anybody that does that? Not many. But we've been doing that same thing since 1968. That's hardcore, yeah. Just like this. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about wisdom. Oh, man. There's a lot of ways of acquiring it, and I'm going to share some of the ways to and some of the ways not to acquire wisdom. Okay? So in order to set the tone, I'd like to just start with an opening, little bit of a meditation treatment. So I'll invite you to join with me and go within. And in this calm, peace, and stillness, allow yourself to just relax and let go. Relax and let go. Relax and let go, because the point of power in one's life is always in the present moment. Right here, right now, you can determine what it is that you're going to experience in this journey. So I invite you right now to take one idea that you have that's a must to experience in your life. Maybe one idea that you'd like to do, but you can't because of this, that, or the other thing. So let's take away all of those reasonings and let's bring into our mind that's something that we want to do. Just the one thing. And let's work with that right now. And let's just visualize that in our mind's eye and see what it would be like as though we're experiencing it right here and right now. As though it's already accomplished and we're reveling in the joy of that which we truly desire. So just take a few moments and celebrate that idea as being present in one's life now. And so now, as we've reveled in this idea that is present emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually right now in our mind, let us just accept that it is now accomplished because it's set in motion in mind. And during the coming weeks, let's allow our attention to be on our intention of experiencing this idea. And to be so bold as to do what we can right here and right now to start with, to bring this idea into reality. Knowing that the creative process works through us and by means of us, bringing to us the ideas, the conditions, the ways, the means, and the people necessary for the fulfillment of our declaration. So with it now being declared and accepted, I know it is so, and so it is. Oh my, and that is so powerful to have your attention on your intention. It's one of the great things little things I picked up recently, because a lot of people have an intention to do something and then they just never get around to doing it. Is that anybody here? Yeah, and it's a good intention. But you see, the problem is here, one of the things that people say is, I have a hard time with my belief system because why is it so hard for me to believe something I want to believe and do? Well, it works like this. If you've got intentions to do a lot of stuff that you like to do and want to do, and your attention's not on that, it's somewhere else, then really what you're doing is lying to yourself. Because you say you want this, but you're doing something else that has nothing to do with it. That's a lie. I got to do a talk on lying to yourself. Most people won't like it. But anyhow, that's a lie. Okay? So when you go to do something you really want to do and you say, I want to really believe in it, and you're working with it, how can that part of you really believe that you really want this when you said you wanted all that other stuff and never did anything about it? Do you see what I'm saying about your belief system? So one of the things we got to do is we got to really start getting the wisdom to start telling ourselves the truth. And if we're not going to do it, tell the truth and just say, hey, I guess I'm not going to do that right now. Be like Yoda. We don't try, we do, or we don't do. Forget the rest of it, okay? Save a lot of grief. And actually, that wasn't what I was going to talk about, but it seemed like a good thing to start on. So awareness is really the beginning, and what the awareness is what am I constantly thinking about all the time, as opposed to what I say I wanted to experience all the time. Do I want to have peace and harmony in my life, and I got all these uncomfortable people? Let's put it that way. Isn't that a nice way of putting it? Uncomfortable people, and I am allowing them to have space in my head. I'm renting it to them because they can't be in there unless I rent space to them. Did you know that? Nobody can get in your head except the people you let there. But how many times do we spend a lot of time with people in our head that is not a really good place for us to be, when we could be looking at solution and other more creative things? So always be aware of what you're thinking. Notice what you're noticing, as Mary Mannon Morrissey said. My affirmation here is, I am divinely guided, led, directed, and inspired at all times and in all ways. And I act accordingly on the messages I receive from Spirit. That's the core of my program and what I'm teaching, and what you're going to see unfolding in the next few months. So keep tuned to that channel. Ernest Holmes said a little bit about something on page 476. He says, starvation takes place on more than one plane. More people are starved spiritually and intellectually than they are physically. A full stomach will never appease an appetite for learning, nor can a loaf of bread satisfy the inner craving for reality. The whole being needs to be fed. Bread and meat for the body, sorry vegans, knowledge and wisdom for the soul, atmosphere and consciousness for the spirit. I think I should read those again, eh? The whole being needs to be fed. Bread and meat for the body, knowledge and wisdom for the soul, and atmosphere and consciousness for the spirit. And you know, people will say, well, that sounds difficult. It's easy. Don't make it difficult. It's easy. All one has to do is go back to spiritual economics. I'll paraphrase a little bit off page 76, what Eric Butterworth says, that we come to the awareness that our most valuable asset in life is the control of our inner world of mind and emotions. Nothing can satisfy or equal any satisfaction until we come to accept that and work with it. Okay? So wisdom is taking care of your own house. And let other people clean theirs. Be there to guide and support, but don't go trying to clean someone else's house when one's house isn't clean. In particular, if that person doesn't want their house clean. They could live in a dirty house. We seek out and support those who are ready, knowing that doesn't mean they're not ready now. They won't be down the line. Sometimes it takes a little time for stuff to set in. Wisdom versus its opposites of foolishness or stupidity. Anybody ever walk on that side? Foolishness or stupidity? I could write a book on just that. I mean, I have more credentials than anybody else here in that area. I can guarantee it. Right, Vera? I would go to Anna, but Vera's known me for 56 years, so. But yeah, so she knows that other part too. So let's don't talk about, I got a talk to do here. Let's leave that one alone. Okay, yeah. So I got this quote here I thought was interesting. Now listen to this. Matthew Ainsworth said the question, what is the opposite of wisdom? He says, is it called foolishness? How can you recognize it in people? Answer, to keep it simple, I would say the opposite of wisdom is knowledge. Hang on to that, because we're going to talk about that. As in, knowledge tends to make one arrogant, where wisdom tends to make one humble. I was saying, do you know how much knowledge I have that I never talk about? I have hundreds of hours and a couple of hundred books on esoteric philosophy, the occult, Edgar Cayce, the referendum, the secret societies, and all of that, and I could talk to you for hours on it. And to what good? Basically not much. We'll prove that I'm pretty smart in that area. But what else does it prove? Not much. However, I'm also very wise and a lot of other very knowledgeable in this area too. The difference is I talk about it because I use it and I apply it, and that's where the wisdom comes. More on that coming, of course. But that's just a little something to think about. And there's a fine line between wisdom and stupidity, foolishness, idleness, neutrality, and freewheeling. Sometimes I go, we are slow learners, and sometimes we are slower learners. What's the difference? A slower learner is someone that meticulously takes time, over a committed period to really learn. So I wanted to go through the Science of Mind textbook again, and I got involved with a group out of Pennsylvania, and we read every word and talked about every word right from the beginning to the end, just over 3 years. Every Saturday for 2 hours in the morning. It was quite the interesting learning experience. Slow, methodical, effective. And I already read The Science of Mind a half a dozen times before, but that was different. Then being a slow learner, I don't know why I'm going to tell you this example, but it's an example of not getting it. And if you're a slow learner, that means you keep repeating the same kind of behavior over and over again and getting the same kind of results and wondering what's wrong with everybody. You ever done that or know anybody like that? Yeah. And it's one of the most bizarre things, but anyhow, it goes back to 1972 when I had my needle meth addiction, and the boys got me and locked me up, and then they took me out of town for 3 days. We used to go on these trips as all the guys were out there, and you know, when you come down off of hardcore drugs like that, the needle, you're not nice. You get really ugly. And I was really ugly with the boys, and I'm big, and I was fairly rugged in those days, I guess it's called. That's a nice way of putting it. So what happened was 6 or 8 of them, and big guys, not the little ones, come over, grab me. I'm about 350. I'm pretty rugged in those days, too. Picked me up and threw me in the lake. Okay. Get up, go back, did the same thing. Same thing happened. And you know, after about 5 or 6 times that happened, and you know, after that, I really got it, that if I keep doing that, I'm going to keep getting thrown in the lake. Right? So I decided to stop. Okay? Do you see what I'm talking about? And you got to ask yourself, like, one of my favorite things is working with women who've had bad relationships with men. And, you know, a couple of 50-year-olds I had, one from here and one from Calgary, same ladies, and put them through my program and that, and told them that they would end up meeting a nice man and get married within a couple of years, and I'd do the wedding. I'm going to tell them I told you so. Well, I'm not going to tell you what they said to me when I told them that. Geez, they were not nice at all. Real proper ladies that you'd never know. They could even know that word other than say it. They called me everything, but, well, I can't even say what they didn't call me because it wasn't nice. But they go through that, and they did that, and they looked at what they needed to look at, and went through and had that healing experience and that release. And damn, within 2 years, they both met these really nice men. They couldn't believe that there were nice men out there. And I did marry them both, and well, one just passed last year, but they're both still married, and the guys are still nice. Okay? But you gotta get over what you're stuck in. Because if not, if they'd have walked out and not done nothing and never tried another thing with a relationship, which they probably would have, guess what would have happened? The exact same thing. And I always tell people when they do my program and they go through this, especially with a bad relationship, that they're not allowed to have an intimate relationship for 2 years. I didn't say you couldn't go out and dabble in the market, whatever that means. Not an intimate relationship, because it'll end up in a disaster because you've got to get cleared what you need to get cleared. And the ones that do it are really successful. They get the good endings. And the ones that they don't, one of my other favorite people right now that I'm working with is doing really well, didn't, and got the worst crap kicking of her life in that one. But she's really adamant about the 2-year thing now. Okay? So sometimes we are slow learners and we take a terrible beating. The point is, when we've had enough, there is a way out of it. That's a clear thing to know. Wisdom is really knowledge and experience. Dr. Holmes said, knowledge and wisdom for the soul. So, knowledge is not wisdom by itself. Like I said, all that knowledge doesn't do any good unless I went out on the lecture tour to be an expert in esoteric philosophy. So, knowledge plus practical application, getting out in the trenches and doing it. So, when you do what you learn, then you become wise. Okay? And is it that easy? Well, there's a lot of rough edges to chip off. But you got to be like Michelangelo, with yourself. Michelangelo never went out to get a piece of stone to do a carving. He went out to find the piece of stone that his carving was in. The only man never to do makeup sculptors, just a few notes, and he did it. The only one in history to ever do it like that, and to do it so well. And they said, well, how do you do that? He said, it's easy. Once I find that piece of stone, I just chip away all the pieces that aren't the person. Do you hear that? You're like that piece of stone with that perfection already in it to experience the highest and best that you got here. All one has to do is accept that and begin to chip away the pieces that aren't. Just that some of us got bigger stone chunks to get through than others. And I always got these big artists and that. I was not an artsy person, but David, you heard I saw all the imitations all over the place, and I walked in that studio and I saw that statue he did, and I can't tell you, something happened to me. It's just unexplainable. You have to see it, then you'd understand. But the one that really got me was the three that he didn't finish. And they are the most freaking amazing pieces of work of anything I ever seen. And he was commissioned, so he got them part done, and they're called the Three Prisoners. And you could see he got them all part, and all of them looked like, all of the sculptors that he got, all of them looked like they were just trying to get out of the stone. I don't know much about art, but I know you can ask Anna. That was incredible. So you see, the perfection of whatever that is that you want to be or experience and have is already there. All we got to do is give our attention to the intention, and then all the other stuff that comes up around it that says no is just a chunk of rock to be chipped away. So when are you going to be done? You're not done, dear. Because I got to tell you, the chipping still goes on, as I've just been experiencing over the last month. Because everybody has their little issues. I've been dealing with something called the dark night of the soul, which is really an interesting concept. Another talk, another day. Got to keep you interested. So, a quote, my quote. Knowing what's right doesn't mean much unless you do what's right. How many people know what's right and still don't do it? They do something wrong. Anybody here? A few. Yeah, that's why I probably come up here to talk about it. I don't even want to go there. My whole life was like that before. Now I count the ones that I'm still working on. Now, this is my quote here. When you're upset, angry, full of angst, the choice is to react versus act upon the situation. To be part of the problem instead of part of the solution. So we always have that choice. We could react and be part of that problem, or we can act upon it and be part of the solution. You say, well, which one am I going to do? Well, I don't know, but I can guarantee you're going to be one or the other. You're going to be part of the problem or part of the solution. Okay? That's something one has to weigh. And of course, my formula for success, I did a lot of stuff in here. Attitude plus choice is equal consequence. I taught this to over 50,000 kids in junior high schools, and 4 different provinces, and in the Young Offender Center, in the penitentiary with kids, and that's the stuff I always tell them. And it's an easy one to prove because I could tell somebody got a bad attitude and the choice they made. Oh, what was your consequences? Well, it wasn't lovely. I used to have this thing where I like to control and manipulate police officers. And there's actually quite a talent to it. And I was actually quite good. However, you don't learn it by doing it that way. If you got to take it to the edge, sometimes you go over the edge. And the response one gets is quite a bit different and relatively unfavorable, to say the least. Right, Vera? Oh, I should have said that. I don't want to get into that. There's a lot of stories there. Holy. Whew. Okay. And, it seems like a big jog, but Teddy Roosevelt, actually Arthur Ashe, a bunch of us said, do what you can with what you have right here and right now. So we got to get started. Well, I'm a little too old. Well, I remember somebody here that I had once, one of the greatest stories of all. And her husband left her as a drug addict with 2 kids, and she had no education, no money or anything. And we were working on my program, and she had this dream. She had this dream to be a nurse. But I said, well, how long is it going to take? Well, it'll take 2 years to upgrade my education to get in, 4 years at university, and 2-year practicum. But that's a long time. That's 8 years. I said, well, how old are you going to be in 8 years if you do it? She told me, and I said, how old are you going to be in 8 years if you don't do it? Did you hear that? So she did it. Last I heard from her was after the 8 years were up and that. And I gave her an exercise to do by affirmations, 21 days. Took her 5 years to do it, but she did it. That's how committed she was. But that commitment to doing that gave the commitment to doing it for herself to do something good. Okay? She salvaged her life, was being able to help one of her sons who had a drug problem, but stuff like that. So, practical wisdom. In practical wisdom, I always tell people that preparation is an essential key of wisdom. In fact, it doesn't matter what the circumstance or situations that you have to go before an interview. Anybody been interviewed by panels for jobs? How about the National Parole Board for pardons? And nobody there, not on that one? Yeah, so I always taught how my students how to prepare themselves for anything like that. And really, it's the energy that you take and what you take in about yourself. If you're afraid and lack confidence, that energy exudes from you and those people get it. The best example was a National Parole Board. Now these guys are tough characters. They've been through a lot. And when one is sitting there, because I'm going for a pardon after I had one before but got busted again, blah, blah, another story. And I'm there, and there's 7 people on the panel. 1 guy, the chair at the other end, and 3 on each side. And the procedure begins. And the guy down at the other end does all the talking, all the questions, and the other 6 people don't do anything. So you're probably saying, why are they there? Those people don't listen to what you say. They watch who you are when you say it, because you reveal that. You reveal who you are and what you're doing through your eyes. And these guys, they go up some of the toughest in the country. They're the National Parole Board. And the guy was good. I loved him. He was such a good questioner, very thorough, and he did something right at the end that most people would be absolutely horrified by it. But anybody ever see the old Columbo, the detective Columbo? Yeah. Yeah, well, he pulled a Columbo on me. And I love doing that, Columbos on people. Oh, you have no idea how valuable that is in your personal growth and development and how much you won't like it. So at the end, he said, well, Mr. Craig, that's very good, very impressive. Well, I think we're just about wrapped up here. Oh, by the way, it would appear that when the first time you got a pardon, you were lying to us. I said, well, I can't say much to that except that was true. However, I can substantiate everything I've said I've done to get me to this point now, and it's all available. Cha-ching, bang, right there. Because you see, they're watching the eyes, they're watching the body motion, and if you don't know, if you don't believe that's how they work, you haven't been interrogated as much as I have. Okay? But that's how it works. That's how people tell. And when you go into an interview, a real good interviewer doesn't really care as much as what you say is about who you present. And who you present determines 100% of how you feel about yourself. That is who you present. Yourself. Authenticity. Don't ever try to be something you're not. If it doesn't measure up to what they want, too bad. Next. Okay? So I know for you, as I know for myself, that we're like Johnny Cash in this journey of spirituality. It says, I walk the line. I keep a close watch on this heart of mine. I keep my eyes wide open all the time. I keep the ends out for the ties that bind. Because you're mine, I walk the line. And you could sing that in the mirror, by the way, folks. Not egotistical. So as I know for myself, as I know for each one of you, there's an acceptance that who and what I am, what we are right here and right now is okay. And there's a willingness within us to accept that and chip away all those parts that say no to that. So I know it, I accept it, I give thanks to it, and so it is. Whee! Okay.